We'd like to thank the City of Sturgis and Travel South Dakota for sponsoring this video. With more than 77,000 square miles of natural wonders to explore, you'll need to visit multiple times. To learn more about South Dakota, click the link in the description below and be sure to check out the legendary Sturgis Motorcycle Rally, August 4th through 13th. When people think of South Dakota motorcycles, they typically think of the Sturgis Motorcycle Rally, which is celebrating its 83rd year in 2023. It's a great event and you really should attend it at some point. However, South Dakota has so much more to offer than just the rally. So what we've done is we have gathered a group of adventure motorcycles to take them out and to sample the winding roads and the remote trails here around the Black Hills of South Dakota and the Sturgis area. Now, you may have already noticed we have 4 people and 3 motorcycles. What we planned to have here was a representative from every category of the adventure touring class. What we originally had was a BMW GS 1250, the Ducati DesertX, the Aprilia Tuareg, and the KTM 390 Adventure, from giant all the way down to small. Unfortunately, when we crashed the BMW in the puddle, it's throwing a code telling us not to operate it. So we had to adapt. And this is an adventure trip, and it's not an adventure trip until you have to change your schedule. So that happened on our first day. When people think of adventure motorcycles, they think about going places, both on-road and off. And the most important interface in that between the rider and machine is the riding position. So we've got 3 different sizes of motorcycles. One's dramatically smaller, the other 2 are they're minor differences. But I thought we'd start by going around and talking about how each of these bikes fits different size riders. Abhi, since you're the tallest and standing next to the tallest of the motorcycles, would you like to say a few words about the Ducati and then we'll chime in?
Absolutely. For me, this was the most like a dirt, it was just a bigger version of a dirt bike. When I was sitting on it, I thought the ergonomics were perfect. When you look at the bars and the relationship from the bars to the seat to the pegs, from that kind of rider triangle, I never felt any comfort issues throughout the whole week. Standing up, I would have liked the bars to be a little bit taller when riding in dirt, but it was never really an issue. I think that Ducati really did a really good job for taller riders, both when seated and standing. And I think that the tank shape was also really good in terms of being able to grip it with the legs and not being too worried about seat height to ground either when I was at a stop.
How tall are you, Abhi?
I'm 6'3".
Okay, that's
good reference.
Yeah, you're at the high end of the scale. Ryan, what are your thoughts on the Ducati?
Yeah, I mean, really, I had so much fun on the Ducati on this trip. And what's interesting is that the bike really fits Abhi well, but for me, it's spot on. And standing up, I don't really feel like I need the bars to be any higher. I'm 5'8". It's a bit of a stretch to the ground, especially with the rally seat that we have on this model. But ergonomically, I kind of prefer it the most. There's nothing that I would change on that bike.
I agree. With the Ducati, ergonomically, I'm 5'11", and it fit me perfectly, especially when off-road. I will say, since Ryan brought up the rally seat, on the road, the rally seat in a longer distance, I think might become a bit of a torture rack. I don't know if I would opt for that seat if I was planning on doing long miles in the saddle to get to the off-road portion. What about you, John?
I'm going to echo what Ryan said. Brian and I are pretty much the same dimensions, and for me, standing up, bars were right. It's awfully fun to ride standing up. Sitting down, it was comfortable. For me, it was it's a great fit either on the road or in the dirt.
Well, we've gone with the largest one. Let's switch down to the smallest one just for a little shake up here. John, what do you think about the KTM from the ergonomic perspective?
I've got a lot of good feelings about this little bike. One is it got me through some pretty tough terrain that I didn't expect it to do as well. It is almost impossible. I'm 5'8". It's almost impossible for me to stand up because the dimensions are so small. Sitting down, it was much easier.
I agree with you there. I think that the 390 Adventure is just a handlebar bend and a handlebar riser away from being a really nice lightweight adventure bike, particularly in the off-road sections. The rest of the controls I thought were in the great position for me. I was really happy with it. However, I'm going to fess up a little here and say that I dumped the KTM not once, but twice in puddles on this trip. And I believe it was because I was shaped like a question mark, and it made it difficult for me to get my weight as far rear as I probably needed it to be. So there's my confession and my feelings about the KTM.
Yeah, the KTM is probably, you know, one of the most technologically advanced bikes in its own lightweight adventure category. It's got a TFT display, it's got ride modes, switchable ABS, traction control, adjustable suspension. It's got a lot of really great stuff. But ergonomically, again, for a guy that's 5'8", I should probably fit on this thing. And sitting down, I even feel like my knees are up in kind of a weird position, but sitting down is not really so bad. I kind of prefer to ride it off-road sitting down most of the time. But standing up is really awkward. The reach to the bars is really low. That said, exactly what John mentioned. It is easy to get through difficult terrain because it's about 200 pounds lighter than the BMW that you don't see here. And obviously you know how Avi feels about it, I think, but.
Yeah, I should probably keep this short. For me, sitting was the only way I could really get on that bike. I kind of felt like a mini bike, and my knees are at my elbows type of thing. I was pleasantly surprised by it otherwise, but Evans has, I think, hit the nail on the head. You have to do something with the handlebars for a taller person to be able to use that.
Well, that brings us to the bike in the middle.
The Tuareg.
Brian, what are your thoughts?
Oh man, I love this bike. You know, we did the comparison where we rode 2 of these and a Tenere back from Sturgis to Los Angeles.
Which is why we're here, because we only traveled through South Dakota, and we thought would come back and sample it.
The off-road for sure.
Yes, definitely.
But yeah, the Tuareg's a great bike. For me, ergonomically, it's almost spot on. When I'm sitting down, it feels like the bars are a little high. Makes me think of ape hangers in Sturgis. But standing, it's 100% spot on. It feels really good. It's got decent wind protection. You've got cruise control, the windshield and everything. It's a really great package for that long haul tour that we did. But at the same time, it's been fantastic off-road because the thing only weighs like 465 pounds, something around there. And the suspension handled everything we did today too. Like it's just a really great all-around package. I mean, we've got other videos where we said the same thing, but it's pretty spot on.
There's a reason why we voted this bike our motorcycle of the year last year. And this trip hasn't changed that feeling either. Avi, what do you think about the Tuareg?
I was surprised because even though this is smaller in terms of engine displacement and weight and things like that than the DesertX, that to me was my happiest place to be ergonomically. I think a lot of it is what Ryan just mentioned. The bars are higher. They are a little ape hanger-like when you're on the road, but when I was off-road standing up, that was by far my favorite bike to ride from an ergonomic position standpoint.
John?
I'm going to follow the party here, and that is, I love that bike. The triangle for me was perfect. Bars to seat to pegs, and there was a couple times on the road I thought, man, this thing is really fun. I would ride that bike across the country. Terrific bike. In the dirt standing up, the bar triangle, again, it was perfect. That little motor, boy, that 660, it's a great motor. It's got a great moan to it, so there's a little bit of a appealing sound, but overall, I really like the Tuareg.
And I'm going to continue this love fest and say that, you know, just the more time I spend on this bike, the more I like it. And if I had to choose an overall favorite, I would definitely say it was a Tuareg, just because it's not the best at any one of these things, I don't think, but I think it does really, really well. I'm going to take that back. I think this is my preferred bike off-road. Maybe not my preferred one on the highway, but definitely my preferred one off-road.
It holds its weight really well, and I mean, the Ducati is like 506 pounds, and it does incredible off-road. You can really push it, and it's really stable, but at the same time, once it gets a little out of whack, you can feel all 500 pounds of it. With this one, you can really lean it over and ride it really quickly. The gas tank's low down on it, so the center of gravity is really low. The engine's light. It's just really easy to ride off-road and on.
What do we think about the off-road handling of these bikes? I mean, which would you prefer in an off-road setting? Anyone want to start?
For me, I really like riding these adventure bikes aggressively off-road. It's having an engine like this, you know, I mean, it's a dirt bike is fun, it's lightweight, but with an adventure bike, you have a substantial horsepower and torque increase, so it's just fun to rip on these things and be a hooligan. And for me, it was the DesertX for sure. That Ducati V-twin is an absolute ripper. It's so torquey. It's so much fun to just launch the bike over things, and it handles it. It handles it really well. The suspension is probably the stiffest, sportiest setup out of these. It's also adjustable, but it really does an excellent job off-road of keeping the thing stable and keeping upright.
I mean, I would say I would concur with you in the sense that if you are at Ryan's skill level, I think that the DesertX is the way to go. It is by far the most fun. A lot of it is the engine and the way it delivers power. But I think, so those times I wanted to like follow you or keep up or be aggressive, this was by far the most joy. But overall, if it was a thing that I was going to buy for myself to experience off-road and maybe putt a little bit, the Tuareg would definitely do it. I think because of the lighter weight and the way that the bars give you that kind of control and able to leverage it out.
It's funny, as the least experienced off-road rider here, I didn't think I was going to enjoy the DesertX as much as I did, but it's got that torque down low, and it can be really kind to you unless you pull its tail. And you know, I scrupulously avoided pulling its tail unless the dirt was extremely straight or we were on pavement. I expected when we got into the more technical sections that I would like the 390 Adventure the most, because I have a KLX 300 and I like a smaller bike for that, because me and Gravity off-road, we have a very intimate relationship, and so I thought it would be easier to pick up and easier to handle. The funny thing is, with the riding position what it was, I gravitated towards the Tuareg, and I found that it was my favorite in its off-road handling. You know, it has bottom end grunt for someone that's going slow like me, but when you do wick it up, it goes really nicely. Maybe not as abruptly or as intensely, that's the word I'm looking for, as intensely as a DesertX, but I think it's the most well-rounded of all of these bikes.
You know, I ride a lot in the desert, and I've got a lot of off-road experience. The Ducati is really fun because it gets you out of trouble, but it can also get you in trouble. I found that the Tuareg was, you know, it's a softer motor, but with the suspension, it's just terrific. I really like the Tuareg off-road. But this 390, I rode through a lot of really muddy, nasty stuff. When we were riding yesterday, there was a lot of advanced riding. You had to be really conscientious of what you were doing. This little 390 doesn't get you in trouble, and it soldiered through everything I tried. Everything, no matter what. I was going through the middle of mud puddles. People going to the side. It's like, nah, I'm going to go right through the middle. It's a great little bike. I really like this. It doesn't get you in as much trouble, but boy, the other bikes, really, really competent. I think they're all great bikes, but this was a lot of fun.
So I guess that brings us down to the most important thing in a motorcycle. You know, how does the whole package go together? What do we think is the thing that would make the best use of the combination of on-road? Because we've been mostly focusing on off-road because, you know, the highways in South Dakota are exquisite. They're well maintained, they're windy. At this time of year, they're not that crowded. It's wonderful, but really where this trip for me has shined personally is in the off-road component of it. And because I've been listening to you all on the headsets, I think that you all might concur with me. So as far as the best package, which do you think that you would do and why?
I mean, for me, you know, it's difficult because I absolutely had the most fun on the Ducati, hands down. The only problem with the Ducati is in this setup, the bike is nearly $24,000. And that's a whole lot of money when you consider the Tuareg with these crash bars is $13,200. So it's you know, if it's not my money, the DesertX, it's just so much more expensive. It's really kind of hard for me to justify it, but I had a lot of fun on the Tuareg too. So. And it's the all-around package. The Tuareg's motor needs to be spun up a little bit more to get into the torque, but not nearly as much as the KTM's.
Yes.
You really have to kind of wring that thing's neck to get it into the power band, but once you get there, it is a, you know, you're kind of reminded that 390 motor is in a sport bike and a naked bike. But it's hard to come up with a reason that the Tuareg doesn't make more sense than either one of these bikes.
Well, motorcycles aren't necessarily about logic, so.
Just need to save a little bit more.
Yeah. John?
All right, the Ducati was, as I've described, kind of dating an exotic Italian girl. The exhaust system is in, we all talked about it, is it had a nice burble on, you know, for what came as an OE pipe. It had a really nice pitch to it. And it had a great sound, you know, using the power shifter.
And it just cost you $3,000 extra from the base model.
It's a quarter of a Tuareg.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the Tuareg, I have to say something about that bike. We were doing a lot of curvy roads coming down from Mount Rushmore, and I realized it just handles so nicely. It's not a bike that you have to make several adjustments as you're in a turn. We were riding at a really fast clip, and I was leading the group and realized of the 3 bikes, I really like that one the most. Now let me just talk about the KTM 390. There was a lot of times I was following these guys and realize you do have to really spin it up. It's 40 horsepower versus 80 horsepower versus 110 horsepower. But I was able to keep up with these guys on a lot of, you know, it's that old saying, it's better to ride a slow bike fast than a fast bike slow. The little 390 was a great bike. Overall, the Tuareg was my choice.
I'm gonna have to go with the Tuareg too, but I've already said that, and it's just because it's such a balanced package. It has everything I'd want for traveling long distance on the highway. It has everything that I need and more for getting off-road. And as my skills advance, I don't think I would outgrow it per se, like, you know, maybe a smaller bike. So that gets my vote. Abhi, what's your winner?
The Tuareg is my winner. And for me, my main takeaway on this trip was actually how the bikes changed my personality based on what I was riding. So you get on the KTM and you know that you're not gonna be going that fast, and you get more comfortable with going slow and just billy goating it. And then when you're in traffic, I didn't mind when I was behind someone on the KTM versus when I was on this, all I wanted to do was pass people. It's for me, it was really my riding style and my way of appreciating what South Dakota has to offer changed based on what I was sitting on. So whenever I was on this, it's kind of a hooligan, revving this a little extra, trying to get the backfires to come because it sounds awesome out of this pipe.
Yeah, the quick shifter's great too.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, solid.
The Tuareg is, though, my overall vote for a lot of the same reasons that these guys have described. I would probably spec it exactly like this and add a quick shifter and some bags, and I'd be set. I'd be a very happy guy.
Now, we talked about how the Ducati was the most expensive of the bunch, but that's not its base price, and we really ought to explain, you know, what people would get for some additional money, because it makes a big difference in this motorcycle.
Yeah, I mean, base it's around 17.5, but with this cool livery, you know, this Audi e-tron livery, and the headlight guard, the seat, the $3,000 exhaust, it's really the $1,500 off-road package that you probably really want to opt for, and that gives you more substantial handguards. You've got crash bars, a radiator guard, a water pump guard, and then a pretty beefy skid plate, especially from an OEM. Like, that's a solid skid plate. But that's probably what you really want to focus your money on. That said, this thing is sweet, the way it's set up, but again, it adds $6 grand to the base price.
Well, that pretty much wraps up our South Dakota adventure tour. And with any shootout, people want us to pick a winner, and the winners in this shootout would have to be us as riders, because we've had so much fun experiencing rain, sunshine, mud, sand, rocks, pavement, everything that an adventure rider could ask for.
Epic scenery.
Epic scenery. I mean, look at where we're at. So we'd like to thank the City of Sturgis and Tourism South Dakota for sponsoring this video. Without their assistance, we would not have been here. We'd also like to thank the South Dakota Adventure Loop. If you want to experience 900 miles of the best of Western South Dakota's adventure riding, you really should check out their website, because they are absolutely amazing and gave us some inside info on what the best routes were,
and some great tracks.
It has been truly epic. So we hope you liked this video. If you did, like it. If you didn't, well, like it anyway, because we like you, our viewers. And check out the full story at Motorcycle.com.